I was composing a lot for fun, in the dorm room at night, and some of it, ended up getting played, and I'd like put it in front of people, and, they were excited about it. But, I really had to sit down and figure out, like, how do I continue to do this? How do I like be a composer when this is the situation that I'm in? And so I kind of navigated it in two ways. One, I decided to get the what was like a really negatively viewed degree at that time, probably still is, the Bachelor of Arts in Music, which was just a general music degree. And I decided that that's what I was going to do because I didn't want to perform. I didn't want a performance degree. So I got the BA in music going on. I had to have a minor. I got a minor in business, and so I thought, well, business skills might help if I'm trying to be a composer. And the other thing that Morehead offered, which really helped me kind of solidify my path as a composer, it was an undergraduate research fellowship. And it could, like, you could choose any research topic. You could submit, like, this is, apply for this program. And if you were awarded it, I think it was either like by semester or by year, you got to work with a faculty mentor and kind of pursue this research and get paid for it too, I think. And so I applied for that with composition projects, like creative projects, kind of doing creative research. I did the research fellowship 2 years. 1 year was, I believe, related to the Julia Cameron book, The Artist's Way. My mentor, Dr. Deb Eastwood, she was really vital. She wasn't a composer, but getting to work with her through these undergraduate research fellowships really made a huge difference, I think. And she introduced me to The Artist's Way and thought, you're trying to learn about the creative process, really, and trying to figure out how to be a composer. Maybe this book would be a great tool and we can just research the book. And so that's what we did 1 year. And then the next year, my research was all about melody, which is kind of funny to think back on. And so I like studied scores and whatnot and tried to like connect the dots with melody, and I produced some music and that kind of thing. So anyway, all to say, while I did not like work with a composer or have experience in a composition program, these undergraduate research fellowships made a tremendous difference, and I think laying the foundation for what I do today even. And like this kind of self-starter, autodidactic, I think is the word, approach to things. I mean, it's really like that's what I've learned is like the best path for me, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in doing these research fellowships, I remember going to the library a lot, and I would just like spend as much time as I could in the library looking through the music books. There was like oversized score sections in the library that like no one else I knew was looking at, but I was, at least to my knowledge, and discovering like George Crumb's oversized scores in these places, and like finding the score to The Rite of Spring, and like all this different stuff was just like there. And I would spend like just as much time like listening and looking at scores. But what I would soon learn soon after I graduated, once I started grad school, is, I was really only looking at like a small slice of what could be considered contemporary music. So again, I'm going to get to that in a moment. I think what I knew at this point was that the only way I knew how to move forward was that I had to get into a grad school composition program. And again, there were no composers around me, like professional composers or composer faculty. I remember I took like a lesson with a guy. There's a composition program in Kentucky. This is all in Kentucky, by the way. I haven't mentioned that yet. But at any rate, there's a composition program at Center College in Kentucky, of all places. And I remember taking a lesson with this guy. And I don't remember anything about the lesson, but he gave me his like an old copy of Samuel Adler's orchestration book, and and that was it. And Didn't really go anywhere past that, but of course that book has been invaluable to me. And it wasn't until my senior year when I was applying to programs, kind of just like taking shots in the dark, not knowing what I was doing, that a composer came to Moorhead. And this would be, I think, my first encounter with a composer. And that's James Grant. We were premiering a work of his, a double concerto for tuba and euphonium with a wind band. And he came to work with the wind band, and my tuba euphonium professor, Dr. Stacy Baker, was obviously premiering this piece with her duo. And so she was like, "Do you want to meet with Jim? Do you want to take a composition lesson with Jim?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like that, please." So I had a lesson with Jim, and I was showing him some music of mine that I'd written for flute and saxophone. This piece was like kind of a big time piece for me. The flute and saxophone professors at Moorhead had asked me to write this piece for them. The way they approached me about it was the flute professor taught music history, and I was taking a music history class. It was a required class or whatever, and I got like a paper back, like a essay that I'd written that was graded, and at the bottom of the essay, she had written, would love to have you write a piece for us. Like, she, like, her feedback on the essay was like whatever, and then it was like, let's talk. So this piece was called Different Worlds, and for flute and saxophone, alto saxophone. And I just remember like meeting with them for the first time about this piece, and they were like, "Hey, here's everything our instruments can do." And they were just playing extended techniques at me, really. And thinking back on that now, I mean, that was like such an important moment for me. That was really like my first ever composition lesson. Again, I was like probably a junior or senior in college, because then I was able to take this piece into a lesson with Jim Grant. And I don't really remember much about what we talked about. I remember he helped me kind of like re-envision the ending of this piece. And I think like Jim's sensibility of, I'll say like punctuation, musical punctuation, like the way you end phrases or extend phrases, or has played like a really important role in my life as a composer, actually. And I think the first moment was like, I had ended this piece on like a held note. And he said, "This is cool, but it's like they are just like, they go up to this note and they float away into space. What if you bring them back to Earth?" And he suggested I do this like kind of collapse back into like very short notes at the end. And that's what the piece is now. That's it's stayed that way ever since. This was 13 years ago. And, so I was like, "Oh man, Jim's like brilliant. Like I'm applying to grad school programs. Maybe he teaches somewhere and I can study with him." And I said that to him, and he said, "Oh no, I don't teach anywhere. I'm sorry to say, but there's this badass down in Florida named Baljinder Sakon that you should totally think about studying with him. And I can connect you guys, and just, I really hope that you'll consider that." And I thought, Florida, I don't want to live in Florida. But to make a long story short, I ended up living in Florida. I applied to University of South Florida, where Baljinder was teaching. And it changed my life. Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts, or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.